fungus gnat. They are the worst, are they not? They're annoying. They fly up your nose and into your mouth and they land in your drinks. But what can we do? I have a few ideas actually. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We are going to talk about fungus gnat. What are they? How do we get rid of them? How do we even get them in the first place? So for those of you who are new here, hi, hello, welcome. My name is Nikki. This is my channel, Plants, Pots, and Whatnots. And welcome to my Beginner 101 Wednesday series. I don't know what I'm going to call it because that just doesn't roll off the tongue right. But this is the first episode in my Beginner Houseplant Parent series. So today we're going to talk about fungus gnats. I asked you guys what is one of the pests that you seem to struggle with the most, that you find the most annoying, and I did get a lot of people saying that fungus gnats were really obnoxious and they want to get rid of them. Now, I figured we'd start on the easy end. There are some pests that are extremely damaging, etc., but we will get to those in further videos. Today, we are focusing on the annoying fungus gnat. So, if that sounds like something that you would like to watch, then please stick around and let's learn how to destroy some fungus gnats. So first of all, what is a fungus gnat? Now I'm sure if you have seen little things flying around your house, these tiny little flies that you may think are fruit flies, they're actually not. Fruit flies and fungus gnats are very different. Here is what a fruit fly looks like and here is what a fungus gnat looks like. So fruit flies tend to feed more on decaying food and that kind of thing, whereas a fungus gnat feeds more on decaying organic material that's in your soil. And they are really drawn to humidity and moist places. So the reason that they try to fly up your nose, in your mouth, in your ear, and whatever orifice you happen to have available is because they are looking for a moist place to lay their eggs, which when you think about it is absolutely disgusting. Don't sleep with your mouth open. So they don't necessarily bother the plant at all. You would have to have a massive infestation and a lot of larvae in one plant to actually do any harm to it. They don't eat the plant. The larva will eat or feed on the organic broken down material or fungus that's in your soil. So if you have rotting roots and that kind of stuff, they will tend to munch on that kind of stuff. If it's up near the top of the pot, they don't go super far down into the soil. But fungus gnats, for the most part, are just more of an annoyance than anything else. So fungus gnats, what makes them so difficult sometimes to deal with is just the sheer volume and rate at which they reproduce. So an adult fungus gnat, a female fungus gnat, lays between 100 to 300 eggs at a time. And so that's a lot. So when you kill a fungus gnat, that's a potential 300 more fungus gnats that you've just nipped in the bud. Good for you. So the fungus gnat lays the eggs and then those eggs hatch after about 3 days into this disgusting little worm-like larva. So again, like I said, that larva will feed off decaying fungus and organic matter in the soil. So they stay in that larval stage for about 2 weeks and then they mature into the annoying fly up your nose fungus gnats that we all know and love. Now the cool part is these fungus gnats only live for about a week. So we have a couple stages that we need to think about when we're thinking about trying to eradicate the fungus gnat population in your house. We want to target the adult fungus gnats that are actually flying around so that they can't land in soil and create a whole new population. And we want to deal with the ones, the larvae and the eggs that are potentially in your soil and so they can't reach that adult stage. So another thing that you might be asking is how did they even get inside? You would be surprised. There are some soils that you can buy on the market, and I mean, fungus gnat eggs are so incredibly tiny. They just happen, and you know, it's possible that bagged soils and stuff like that that you buy at the store will have fungus gnat eggs or potentially larvae inside them already, which is annoying, yes, but when you think about how they have to, so you'll notice that when you buy a bag of soil, it usually has little holes in it for airflow. Otherwise, the soil inside is gonna get moldy, and then you're gonna buy moldy soil, and trust me, that's worse. So, I mean, there's all kinds of possibility for fungus gnats to get in there and that beautifully moist inside a bag soil and just lay all kinds of eggs. So that is one way that we can bring them in. Another way is when you bring a new plant home, you know, the chances are that there may be fungus gnat larvae, fungus gnats, or eggs in the soil already. They can come in from outside, they can come in on your clothes, like they just find a way. It's like fruit flies. You ever notice, like, where did that fruit fly come from? Like, there was none in here, and all of a sudden there's, like in the winter, the dead of winter, where did this fly come from? They just find a way. They're obnoxious like that. If you're to the point where you have a lot of fungus gnats flying around, you're sitting on the couch, you're trying to watch TV, they're flying up your nose, they're landing in your glass of wine, that's a pain. But why is it so bad? The chances are pretty good that if you see a lot of fungus gnats flying around and you tend to have a little bit of what we would call like an outbreak or an infestation, it's likely that you're overwatering your plants. So that would be one of the first things in how to prevent fungus gnats. So let's go ahead and jump into prevention. So the first and easiest thing that we can do to prevent fungus gnat outbreaks is learning how to properly water to not create an environment that just invites the fungus gnats. You know, it's basically like setting out a smorgasbord and being like, here, I'll feed you. So when your soil is consistently wet, when you have a lot of moist soil sitting on the top of your pot, that is like setting out a full Thanksgiving meal for the fungus gnat. The perfect environment for them to breed and lay their eggs and have the larvae, you know, grow into adults. They just love that. So if we take that away from them, they can't as easily reproduce. So some ways that we can prevent it from starting to begin with. A lot of people swear by bottom watering. So instead of watering your plant from the top, you can set your plant in water, and by capillary action, it will soak up the water from the bottom, and then the top of the soil doesn't get the majority of the wetness. It dries out much faster because the majority of the water is in the lower part of the pot. And usually fungus gnats will only lay their eggs a couple inches down into the top of the soil. So if you take away that wet top soil, they don't have the place that they want to be able to lay their eggs in. But if you're not a bottom waterer like myself, the other thing that you can do to avoid having that soggy soil is making sure that you let your plant dry out enough between waterings. That's not only going to lower the fungus gnat population, but it's also going to save the roots of your plant, because if you're constantly having that moist soil, it's probably no good for your roots either. You're going to run into root rot issues, etc. So those are the two ways you can kind of tweak your watering to help fungus gnats. But what are some other things that we can do to help? Well, one of those things is putting some sort of top dressing on your soil. Fungus gnats can only crawl through, you know, loose soil, like wet mixes and stuff like that. So if you top dress using, say, sand, they're not really going to want to crawl down through that dry sand, nor can they, to get to the moist soil underneath. You can also use things like rocks, like small pebbles. I've seen people use like a steel wool. That way the adults can't get down to the soil, and if there is anything currently in the soil, once it tries to come up through that steel wool, they just get shredded. I've seen some people use moss, but I don't recommend that for a couple reasons. One, there's too many gaps. They can very easily, they're very, very tiny, and they can get down through it. They can get up through it. So moss is going to be basically ineffective in that regard. The one thing that would probably help you the most would be like a sand or a decent layer of small pebbles. Okay. The other thing that you want to make sure of is that you're keeping all of the dead debris off the top of your soil. So if you have a plant and say it's lost a few leaves, they've fallen onto the top of the soil, maybe some of the older dried up sheaths of the petioles have dried up and fallen onto the top. Those types of things will break down on top of the soil over time, and those are perfect places for fungus gnats. They just love them. So you want to try to keep the top of your soil clear of all of that sort of debris, and that will help a lot. The other thing that you really want to avoid too, and I see people recommend this all the time, and I'm like, oh gosh, and that is using food products on the top of your soil for the additional nutrients, etc., for the plant. I know we want to help our plants and we want to do it as cheaply as possible because plant care can get quite expensive, especially when you have a large collection. So we tend to want to use things from around the house, things like bananas, eggs, coffee grounds. I've heard of all kinds of things being used in and on plants that really should be used as food products only. Those things, those organic things, are the perfect thing for a fungus gnat. And at that point, when you start to use things like that, you're also looking at fruit flies. So you're going to have fruit flies and fungus gnats, and it's going to be a whole lot of annoying. So try not to use any organics in or on your soil. Yeah, just don't. It's not only that, but it's going to rot, and it might stink, and it's not pretty, and it's not. Just use fertilizer. So just do your best to avoid any organics like that. Don't put food on your plants. Put them in your mouth, your stomach. Don't put them on your plants. Throw them in your compost. Okay, now let's talk about what we do for treatment. So you've already got things flying up your nose. They're all over your plants. They're crawling all around. Every time you go to water, they're flying up out of the pot, and it's driving you crazy. So what do you do about it? The first thing is, like I said, we need to tackle all of the different stages of the fungus gnat's growth, right? From eggs to larvae to full-blown flying around and up your nose fungus gnat. So there's a few different things we can do. The first thing that I always recommend is getting yourself some sticky traps. Sticky traps are those little yellow sticky pieces of paper, and you can kind of put them around your plants or stick them in your plants. They come in all different types. The yellow color attracts the fungus gnat, so it's like, ooh, yellow, look at it, into the light sort of thing, right? And then it gets stuck to it, and unfortunately, once it gets stuck, it can't do anything, and it eventually just dies. Now, don't feel too bad about that because fungus gnats only live for about a week anyway. So, I mean, you're not like... It's kind of sad to think about. Don't feel bad. They started it. They came into your house unwelcome and uninvited. So sticky traps are the best option for dealing with the adult flying gnats. Instead of going out and buying fungus gnat traps or those yellow sticky traps, you can make your own at home. If you've got yellow paper plates or any kind of yellow material like cardstock, you can get something and paint it yellow. Actually, a really good option would be painting like some spoons or something, like a plastic spoon, or goodness knows, you can paint whatever yellow, as long as it's yellow, because they really seem to like that. And then what you're going to do is, and you probably have Vaseline around your house anyway, just coat either side with Vaseline, and that's basically like a homemade DIY fungus gnat trap, and it works like a charm, and it's with stuff that you already have around your house, so you don't need to go out and spend extra money. There's a little DIY tip for you. So some other ways that you can kind of DIY fungus gnat traps is by laying out just in little cups around your house and around the areas that you find seem to have the worst outbreaks. So it is just a mixture of apple cider vinegar and dish soap. So what you're going to do is you're going to find yourself a glass or a cup or whatever kind of container that you want to use. You fill it up a little bit, just a couple inches depending on, you know, what size of container that you're using. And you drop a few squirts of soap in there, give it a little stir just to break the water tension on the top. And that's basically what the soap is for, is to break the tension of the water on top. So once the fungus gnat lands in there, it can't get back up out of the water. It doesn't land on top of the water like they normally would. It just sinks it right down into the water. Science and stuff, right? Then you're just going to go ahead and stick a piece of saran wrap on top, pop a couple holes in there, and Bob's your uncle. Set those around where you're seeing all of the outbreaks, and those work great. Those are also amazing fruit fly traps. But anyways, try those. They work. They don't cost you anything. It's probably stuff that you already have in your home anyway. So if you can save a couple bucks, why not do it that way? So another thing that a lot of people swear by, and I can't seem to get it easily up here in Canada, but it's a product called Mosquito Bits or Mosquito Dunks. Now, the active ingredient that makes Mosquito Dunks or Mosquito Bits work is a thing called BT. So it's Bacillus thuringiensis, and it is basically a bacteria that you can apply to your plants, and it really targets flying insects like mosquitoes and fungus gnats and that kind of thing, but it won't harm other insects. It won't harm your pets or yourself. So if you use Mosquito Bits or Dunks, the best way to go about it is probably to go ahead and put it right into your jug of water or whatever. Let it sit for 15 to 30 minutes or so. Allow those little bits and pieces to really soak up that water or dissipate into the water. So the BT kind of, you know, disperses in the water, and then go ahead and water your plants with that. And then additionally, you can put some on top of the soil, so the next time you water, you're flushing more of that bacteria down into the soil. And that stuff is really handy for fungus gnats, and that is one thing that is probably one of the more foolproof methods of nipping the egg and larval stage in the bud before they become adults. That is actually a great option as opposed to, say, the yellow sticky traps, especially if you have like a terrarium kind of scenario, because, you know, you have this beautifully aesthetic vivarium or terrarium, and then nobody wants to see this ugly yellow sticky trap hanging covered in dead fungus gnat carcasses in your gorgeous, beautiful terrarium. So using those types of things, anything with BT in it, is great for vivariums and terrarium, because no matter what you put, if you have a vivarium, say you have frogs or some sort of lizards or whatever, it's not going to affect those animals or creatures that you have in there. It's just going to affect mosquitoes and fungus gnats. Diatomaceous earth is another one that I have used, that I have found really effective, or I found it effective in the beginning before I got a handle on how to water my plants to avoid them to begin with. Diatomaceous earth is made of tiny fossilized aquatic creatures called diatoms, and crunched up into the tiny little bits basically turns them into tiny microscopic shards of glass. Now, envision this, if you will. You dust this stuff around the top of your plant, and then those little fungus gnat larvae hatch and they try to come out there, and imagine trying to crawl through an entire room just full of shards of glass. Sick and twisted. but effective. The only thing that you need to watch out for if you're using diatomaceous earth, or a couple things, is one, you should really be handling it with a mask and gloves. You don't want to breathe that stuff in. It's similar to kind of like breathing in like a fiberglass. So avoid that if you can. Even a pair of goggles or glasses would be helpful. The other thing is that it doesn't really work once it's wet. So what you want to do is, if you've just watered your plant, maybe wait until that top part of the soil is a little bit more dry, and then go ahead and sprinkle that around the top. Now you can get, and the stuff that I personally use is a food grade diatomaceous earth. You can ingest it. It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to hurt pets. It's not going to hurt your children. But it is definitely effective for any soil dwelling type of pest. Now, I have seen a lot of people recommend a hydrogen peroxide soak or hydrogen peroxide spraying of the top of the soil. But I've done a little research and I've seen a few videos where hydrogen peroxide has been directly sprayed onto a fungus gnat larva, and at the most it was irritated, and that was about it. It kept on living and it was fine. So, I mean, try it if you want, but I'm not really sure how overly effective it's going to be to eradicate a fungus gnat population. One of the coolest ways to deal with your adult fungus gnat situation is to get yourself a carnivorous plant. So there are all kinds of carnivorous plants that will eat fungus gnats very readily, and I have a couple, and let me go ahead and show them to you. Okay. So the first option is the classic pitcher plant. This is just a tiny one that was more easily accessible, but it has these little pitchers on it, and this is a fairly new pitcher plant. So these pitchers haven't actually opened just yet, but it's creating all these little pitchers. So what happens there, and I'm not sure if you can see that or not, there is actually a liquid in those little pitchers, and it attracts flies and gnats and all kinds of delicious to the plant kinds of bugs, and it's got like a sweetness, almost like a nectar. And what happens is that the fly falls into that liquid in the bottom, gets stuck, and then the plant literally absorbs the pest, which is fabulous. So it's a really cool little plant. Great option. Also really good for if you tend to have a lot of flies in your home. Once these guys get bigger, they're amazing at catching flies. There are some even pitcher plants that have really large pitchers, some of the really more exotic rare varieties that have really, really big pitchers that have been known to actually catch mice, which is wild, but really cool little plant. So that's probably the least effective, I would say, as far as fungus gnats are concerned. The next one I want to show you is called a sundew. They're really cool. This is a really full pot, and I kind of need to like take some out of here and redistribute them. But if I hold it up for you, you can see that each one of the leaves has these cute little fuzzy hairs on them with tiny little glistening balls of stickiness. Hopefully you can see that. If you can't, I will insert some footage up close of what these little sticky pads look like. Really, really cool. So a fungus gnat or another like pest will land on them and stick right to it. Same idea as the pitcher plant. The pest then just gets absorbed into the plant. So that's a really great option as well, as a sundew. And there's all kinds of different sundews that you can get. This is just the one that I have. And what, in my personal opinion, is the best option for fungus gnat control is the adorable little butterwort. Now, I don't have a whole lot of fungus gnats on this particular butterwort because I haven't had a whole lot of fungus gnats in the house. But you can see on some of these older leaves, the little fungus gnats stuck to the bottom. So butterworts have a texture or a substance on their leaves that you can't necessarily feel as much. Well, you can kind of feel it, but it's not quite as visual as the sundew. But it's just sticky enough that when the fungus gnat lands on it, their little feet just stick, and then over time it just absorbs all the nutrients out of the pest, and then it is passed down as the plant grows to some of the older leaves. You can see there. And then the cycle continues. So these are really cool little guys. They get these really pretty purple flowers. And so I have a few of these just kind of spread around the house. And when I have a little outbreak, these guys take care of it in no time. They're pretty easy to get your hands on. I definitely recommend them. They're really cool. They look like little green roses. And in my opinion, that's the best plant that I'm aware of that is great for catching fungus gnats. And it's way more fun. A little bit more aesthetic than those yellow sticky traps. So basically, to wrap this up, there's a few things I'll just kind of recap here. Fungus gnats have 3 different life cycles, from eggs to larva to full adult flying around and up your nose. And we need to kind of nip each one of those stages in the bud in order to eradicate a population of fungus gnats. So really quickly, some things you can do. Don't overwater your plants. Try bottom watering. Keep any debris or organic matter off of the top of your soil. Try top dressing your soil in order for the top or them not being able to like get down into your soil. And for some treatment options, you can use sticky traps. You can use apple cider vinegar and soap traps. You can try Mosquito Bits or any product with BT in it. You can try diatomaceous earth on the top of your soil to hack those little guys into little pieces. And the most fun option, like I said, is the carnivorous plant option. So I think that's pretty much all I want to say. If you guys have some great options that you use or things that you do to keep your fungus gnat populations at bay, please go ahead and throw them down in the comments below. What works for some people doesn't work for others. Some people just find one way of doing it that just works for them. It's easy for them. But pest control doesn't necessarily have to be an expensive situation. You don't need to go out and buy yourself a bunch of sprays, especially for fungus gnats. They're not worth going out and spending any money on any kind of insecticide for. To be totally honest with you, you can eradicate them for free, which is the best price, right? Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it somewhat helpful. Now I need you to go forth and kill fungus gnats. And let me know how it goes. Let me know if any of these options work for you. I would love to hear back. You can also follow me on Instagram at Plants, Pots, and Whatnots. And I would be happy to have you guys over there. I post plant updates and little tips and tricks and all kinds of fun stuff over there. Also keep an eye out Fridays, where I have my more you know, kind of fun videos with things like repotting and plant hauls and plant tours and just whatever else I happen to come up with, and watch on Sundays for my long, more relaxing vloggy type videos, which are just for like a chill Sunday afternoon. Well, I would like to thank you guys so much for liking and watching and commenting and subscribing. If you're not subscribed already, please consider doing so. It would be a huge help to my channel, and I really do appreciate it. I would like you all to have an amazing day, night, week, month, and year. I love you all to bitty bits, and I will see you in the next video. Mwah!